This is just on Jaunty Jams.
How's it?
It's cracking, bro. Howdy, my friend.
Good, how are you?
Welcome. I'm good, bro.
Pleasure.
So, this is just on the
Just
Jaunty
on.
Jams. We've got the one and only Mr. Ray here, a legend that I've met on the Gold Coast, first and foremost. And we're now in the wonderful Ubud in Bali, the spiritual capital of Bali, funnily enough, where a whole bunch of magic happens.
Yes.
Yesterday we connected, we went up to Padma Resort, had some lunch, sat by the infinity pool of the jungle, and had a very enlightening conversation about all things, life, relationships, love, business, and I guess an overall perspective and look at the world as a whole and how we can be change makers in this big world. So thank you very much for welcoming me into your villa here in Ubud. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. An absolute pleasure to record this conversation with you as well. Would you like to introduce yourself? Just share your name, a little bit about yourself, and anything that's present for you right now.
Cool. So my name is Ray. I am coined the business alchemist, where I help transform businesses in the coaching industry. If you're a coach, a mentor, a practitioner, facilitator, or guide, I help you scale your business to 50K per month profits, focusing on spirituality, strategy, and artificial intelligence with my legacy impact system. So that's a bit of what I do.
Epic, brother. So, when we first met, I think I remember actually going to an event and seeing you speak. I hadn't actually met you yet.
Oh, wow.
I think it might have been one of the Money Mind events or whatever.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, saw you speak, and then through our connection at the hub and doing Friday check-ins and slowly connecting, we just, became friends and slowly started having deeper and deeper conversations. And that time has been very pivotal. I know that you've been through some very big changes in that time from when I first met you to now. Would you like to divulge a little bit into that and share what has changed in your reality over the past, let's say, year and a half, from where you were and your belief systems then and the results you were getting then and the reality you had versus now, and what's changed and how you completely shifted that and turned it around?
Yeah, so a year and a half ago, that would be around about January, the start of 2022. In that period of time, I was going through major shifts in my business, and I was also entering into a potential new relationship. And of course, when new beginnings transpire, there are definitely going to be a lot of shifts that are happening internally and externally in various ways. And a huge part of that was the beginning of the writing of my book, right? And at the end of 2021, I completed the first draft, and the entire focus was the energy that I wanted to share with the world was to show people that, hey, you can actually create a life that you truly desire to live. But the person that I was, at the end of 2021 and potentially just the start of 2022, was a person that was a pathological liar, was a person that was still trying my best to prove to everyone that I belong in this world, trying to prove to everyone that, hey, look at me, I'm good enough. A person that did not necessarily believe in love. A person that was very focused on the chase of materialism and defining my self-worth, revolving my self-worth around money, around materialism, around externalities. So the first draft of the book that came out when I was writing it, and it was so funny because when I was working with my book publishers, there was just a huge part of me that was just palming off my work to them, where I was like, just jumping on a Zoom call, I will share whatever I want to share, and then you write. So it wasn't necessarily based on a place of integrity and congruence, but that was the person that I was. And it was truly in that experience and getting into a new relationship and seeing the shifts in my business because of that. And when you're in a relationship with someone that you truly love, you naturally want to be your most authentic, fullest expression of yourself. And therein, really transpired the journey of me shedding those false narratives, those lies that I've been creating in order for me to feel good enough to belong in the world, in order for me to feel as though I'm seen in the world, and so on and so forth. And that was such a huge journey for me, going through all of the conditioning, all of the borrowed beliefs that I've taken on. They have created those lies per se. So, for example, right, like my parents visited myself on the Gold Coast in May last year. And I remember this conversation with my mom. Like, we were sitting on the bed and she literally told me this, you know, she said, like, it's amazing that you've got a partner. That was my partner then. But you don't have to tell her everything. So in my mind, I was like, so that's where it comes from, you know? And there is nothing wrong about that, because your parents are doing the best they can with the conditioning that they have taken on and with everything that they know, right? But that was such a huge awareness piece of me in terms of understanding where my pathological lying trait came from. And now with the awareness, I get to move through it and tap into the core values that I actually want for myself. And the values were of loyalty, were of integrity, were of commitment, were of focus, were of dedication, were of all the things that I truly value. And through that process and going through that relationship, it really supported me towards connecting with self-love with myself, accepting all of me, every single shame that I feel when it comes to being a man in society, every single guilt that I feel about just being my most authentic, fullest expression of myself. And that really shifted my state of being from someone who didn't believe in love, who believed that since everyone lies, it's okay for me to lie anyway, into someone who is now literally writing a book revolving. I totally shifted the entire focus of the book from just all about it being me towards now the theme revolving around the unconditional truth. How to live life fully expressed without resistance, rejection, and repression, because we're only ever resisting, rejecting, and repressing ourselves. Yeah, so that has been a journey of sorts.
Wow, it's pretty incredible, bro. And it's been an honor to witness this journey of yours, and from shifting from that, I guess that false life, not a false life that you're living, but a
false identity that I was subscribing to.
And then to completely unhinge all of that and to come into alignment with a closer version of your truth, or a more aligned version of your truth. So you've also had some pretty awesome business ventures as well. Could you share what you originally were doing a couple years ago, and then now what you've shifted to?
Yeah, perfect. So in 2019 August, I received this sentence from my then employer, and it completely shifted the trajectory of my life. And this sentence was this: it was a normal work day. I was working at a finance technology startup company. I was their first employee. I was learning so much from the co-founders. And then in August, I was working for them for 8 months to date, right? Until August 2019. And it was a normal work day. I was going to work, and the co-founders called me into a room, right? Into a private meeting room, and they said, "I've got something to share with you." And it's like, well, what is it? You know, I have no idea. And it was this statement and this sentence that completely shifted my trajectory. And it was this: your services are no longer required.
Thank you.
And I was like, and being the natural negotiator that I was like, hey, if you do not need me in this position, how about that position? How about that position? And so on and so forth. So I was trying to fight for a place to belong in this startup company, because being the first employee, I had an entire attachment to an idea of being like an eventual executive, an eventual director, all of those things, you know. It was an attachment to an idea of, and everything just came crumbling down. And I was in Australia, I'm from Singapore, so I was a foreign resident in a different country. And someone with 8 months of startup experience, you know, a degree, a foreign resident, trying to apply for another full-time job in that country was just, you know, literally next to impossible. Which I tried, heard nothing back from anyone. And there was a period of time where I came across a business coach on Instagram, and I saw one of his case studies. And it was a 19-year-old kid making around about 25 grand a month within 120 days of working with him. So in my mind, I was like, if this 19-year-old kid can do it, like, why can't I? So I began to actually invest almost like 4.2 grand with him. I was left with $460 in my bank account, with no income coming in, with so much uncertainties. But in my mind was, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I'm no longer gonna put my financial future in the hands of another. I'm going to finally take command of my life and make decisions that elevate me, that expand me, that are for me, right? And long story short, with that commitment, after I invested in the program, if I wasn't sleeping, if I wasn't eating, no matter how many times my friends asked me to go out to party, to have fun, and I was living in a shared house in Melbourne with 2 other university graduate good friends. No matter how many times they asked me to go out, I was just focusing on how can I make this for me. So long story short, within the first month of investing in myself, I hit my first 5-figure month. And that was the most amount of money I've ever seen in my life. My previous annual salary, my full-time job was around about 5K before taxes, right, per month. So experiencing 10K month within the first 30 days of leaving my full-time job and creating for me, it was such an eye-opener, and it was literally, I discovered a whole different door that I was just opening and just entering through. And it was a whole different reality. It was a reality of financial freedom in various ways. It was a reality of, oh wow, the lifestyle that I've been seeing everywhere on social media can actually be real, right? But what transpired after, I began to experience financial success so quickly, within the first 2 months of starting my freelancing journey, I was working on a project that featured the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort, the Push Pick Summit in Australia. I was facilitating the entire event, marketing and sales and so on and so forth. I signed my first 7-figure client within the first 3 months, right? And I was flown to the Philippines by a 7-figure e-commerce entrepreneur to train his sales team within the first 4 months. So success just came to me really, really quickly. And I would always attest that to the commitment I put on myself and I gave to myself to create the success that I was seeing. But the thing is, when external success came to you so quickly, and it was all so new, that became my definition of what success is for me. Yeah, money became the metric in which I measure my self-worth against. So for the next 6 months to a year, all I focused on was how can I make more money? How can I scale faster and so on and so forth? And 6 months into my freelancing journey, one of my mentors from the beginning of my journey proposed a business partnership with me. And being 6 months old, I was like, whoa, this person in his 40s, having built and sold businesses in the past, apparently, is wanting to be in a business partnership with me. I was like, whoa, let me just fucking do it. And I entered into the business partnership, and in hindsight, it definitely served a purpose. And at the same time, I didn't realize that I was subconsciously putting him on a pedestal, which created an energetic imbalance within the partnership itself. And what transpired thereafter was the realization that, hey, I was actually generating, 12 months into the business, I was actually generating 80 to 85% of the revenue, which was literally a huge burden that I was carrying for the both of us, that I was taking on because of this need to be needed by him. This subconscious need to be needed by others. And it was through a conversation, I had different conversations with him to seek equilibrium, to bring the energies back into balance. And the final conversation that we had was discovering our strengths and weaknesses in various ways. And we discovered that I really enjoyed making money, and he enjoyed investing the money, right? So we began to go into our roles and specialize in what can serve the business the most. And with that being said, he began liaising with this Forex investment company in order to invest our funds. So we invested around about 120 grand. And for the first 6 months, it was amazing. It was generating us about 10% per month returns, right? Which was 120% per year. And that's insane. You don't find it anywhere else. So what ended up happening was, because of the success that we were seeing for our own money, I began referring my clients, my contacts over to him, over to the investment company that he was liaising with. And we accumulated around about $1 million to $2 million in funds, of clients' funds and so on and so forth. And what eventuated after that was the result of the entire investment company turned out to be a scam. Yeah, it turned out to be a whole shit show of a scam, and it was so crazy because like the loop came back around, and I was in Bali this year, and I connected with the person who was literally in the Jaguar of the co-founder of the entire scam. So I got to know information behind the scenes with regards to that, and it was insane, right? Like the two co-founders, one of them walked away with 950 million.
950 million.
950 million, and the other guy walked away with 350 million.
It was like a worldwide thing.
It was a worldwide thing. Yeah, so it was a whole scam. So we couldn't get any of our money back. Our clients couldn't get any of their money back. And despite him being responsible for the investment side of our business, my business partner then, he wasn't taking radical responsibility for everything that was going on. Like even after it transpired, a couple of months down the line, he was still promoting the the scam, which wasn't ideal in and of itself. So with that, trust was broken, and I had to leave the business partnership that wasn't serving me. I have put my entire like life force energy into the entire business, my blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
I was the one that literally built a team from 0 to 40 team members. You know, it was like my baby. But I just couldn't continue that with him as my business partner because he will have always been an energetic drain, an energetic crux that prevents me from elevating. So I had to leave it, I had to end it. And it was a huge ego death for me because my entire identity coming into business was to become a 7-figure entrepreneur. And with that business, I've achieved that. So letting go of that and rediscovering myself was such a huge undertaking. And it affected my mental health in various ways. It affected my relationship. It affected it's almost as though I was discovering who the fuck am I in this world again, you know, and I was feeling as though I was starting from ground zero, you know, having made so much money, and yet now coming back to ground zero is like who am I? Like why, how have I been so naive? And, you know, I was like self-defeating myself in various ways for a couple of weeks, you know. It was a difficult period of time for me because I was moving through the end of the partnership. I was moving through like, what do I actually want to create? I was moving through challenges in my relationship. And it really took a toll on me in various ways. And throughout the experience, I began to really discover the truth of who I am. I began traveling the world for a couple of months. I was in South Africa for 3 months, came back home to Singapore for 6 weeks, and then came to Bali for 3 weeks, back to Australia for a couple of months, and I was just traveling and really like letting the flow of life, surrendering to the flow of life that was coming forth for me. And I was really discovering myself through all that in the relationship that I was in the venture that I was thinking I wanted to create, and I was just figuring myself out. Like there was so much uncertainty, there was no concreteness, there was no clarity, and I was just letting life take me however it take me. And it was truly after the end of the relationship that I was in, whereby I began to realize that I have not been living life in love with myself. I have not been living life accepting all of me. I have not even connected myself with unconditional love and lived life in unconditional love before. So ending that, living that, like having, with that relationship ending, it was time for me to actually experience life, who I am in unconditional love with self. And that was how my current business has been built. And it's been amazing because the energy that I've been putting in has been so congruent and has been so focused on how can I serve the greater good of all, how can it be a win-win situation relative to the business that I had, right? Where it was all about the chase, all about the money, all about like just making more, right? All about needing the proof that I could belong. And it was such a huge shift for me in terms of shifting from the materialistic world towards discovering myself spiritually, and then integrating spirituality with strategy, with business, with money, and then evolving this next phase of my life. And through that, this next phase of my book was also born, and this has been such a fulfilling journey for me this year.
Wow. What a wild ride, and all in the short space of
like a year,
couple years. Yeah. And to me, it sounds like a huge death, basically.
Yeah.
an upheaving of what was once your reality to a birthing of something completely new and completely different to what you could have ever imagined in the past, I guess. And you mentioned this word unconditional love, and you use the word unconditional truth a lot in your book and what you're creating. When we talk about unconditional love, like what does unconditional love mean for you, and how do you, I guess, embody that, or how do you practice embodying unconditional love?
Yeah. I was on a podcast the other day with one of my good friends, James, and we were talking about this as well, like unconditional love, and we were exploring the concept of abundance, right? And people talk about abundance here and there, and like wealth, blah, 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 and like abundance practices, like be abundant and blah, blah, blah. But what does it actually fucking mean, right? Like, what is abundance really, So I began to really explore that within myself, and unconditional love, right? Love at its core is unconditional. Love has no conditions. Love is simply love. Love is all there is. There are no conditions within love itself. Conditions are only placed onto love because of the human condition, right? The ego, the illusion self. I will love only if, right? I will love only when. I will love you only if. I will love you only when. I will love myself only if. I will love myself only when. This is conditional love. And where does conditional love comes from? It comes from the moment you were born, the ancestral patterns that you have taken on. It comes from the borrowed beliefs from your parents, from authority figures telling you what reality should be. It comes from social conditioning, what society tells you a successful person, man, woman should be, right? And we begin to take on all of these beliefs, all of these conditions, and that's how we create conditions and limitations in our life that stops us from loving fully and fully express in that. Because love is unconditional, and that's it. Unconditional love is the full openness, the full embrace to life with everything that is coming forth. It's how open can you be to all possibilities. To let go of the constraints and the prison of expectations that your mind have created, and to embrace the fullness and openness that life has to give. To be infinite in your way of being, to be infinite in your way of thinking. That is unconditional love. To fully be present, passionately present with the embrace of life in the moment that is now. That is unconditional love. At the same time, it's important for us to understand that that's one end of the spectrum. That is the feminine energetic polarity that we are integrating into our lives, to be fully open, to be fully vulnerable, to be fully surrendered to the embrace of life itself. But, right, we need to acknowledge that the current global thought form, the current vibrational frequency of the world is that of fear. So of course, just being fully open isn't exactly ecological, because the entities of fear from the human condition, from the people around you, from the environment, would seek to take from your openness. So if you're not this word, the other end of the spectrum, if you're not discerning within yourself, discerning within the truth of who you are, and create true boundaries, not boundaries coming from trauma, not boundaries coming from lack, not boundaries coming from fear, but boundaries coming from acceptance and true honoring of self, that is discernment. If you're able to create that and yet be fully open to the embrace of life, then you are guarded against these fear entities, and you can truly experience life with all that is. And that is true abundance, to be fully open with every opportunity, every connection that comes your way, yet discerning because of your understanding of self, because of your self-leadership, because of your embrace of you as a creator being, because of your values. Then you're able to literally filter and navigate life with full openness, yet with true discernment. And that is true abundance. Then there are no limitations that you're placing on yourself, only the leadership of self. And that is my perspective with regards to all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So to pinpoint and to lead that, you finished up with the leadership of self. How does one lead oneself to align most with, I guess, their unconditional love, but also their unconditional truth.
Yeah, exactly. Because unconditional truth is when unconditional love and discerning leadership are integrated, right? Then that is the unconditional truth of the greatest truth in your current moment in order for you to be on your highest timeline. Because your your deepest untainted truth is all there is. It is what allows you to be on your highest timeline. It's what allows you to live life fully expressed without resistance, rejection, and repression. That's it. So with that being said, what was the question again? It was quite interesting.
Leadership.
Leadership, yeah.
How do we align leadership with our truth?
Correct. Truth. Unconditional truth. Leadership. So self-leadership is this, right? Self-leadership is your ability to take radical responsibility for your actions. The question, the primary question that highlights self-leadership is this question, where everyone gets to ask themselves, is this question: how did I create this? How did I end up in the current situation I'm in? No matter what is happening or what you perceive is happening to you, right? Whether you are the perpetrator, whether you are the victim, whatever that is, when you begin to ask yourself that, how did I create this situation? Instead of projecting blame onto the other person, you focus within, you focus on yourself as the creator being. That is where you find empowerment, and empowerment is self-leadership, because you're not giving your power away to others, you're not giving power away to externalities. Blaming, projecting is all giving power away. So when you come back within, it's understanding, how did I create this? And I get it, especially with victims of abuse, right? Victims of assault, right? It is difficult for them to actually look within themselves and ask, how did I end up in this situation? How did I create this? And yet, that is the most pivotal question to ask oneself. The most difficult things are usually the most pivotal things, right? Because by asking yourself that, you are taking power back from the perpetrator. Instead of being the victim of an abuse or victim of an assault, you begin to understand, how did I create this situation, and how is this situation coming for me? What can I learn from this? How can I evolve from this so that the pattern that have come forth that led to this situation doesn't eventuate thereafter? But if we choose not to take power back, and we choose not to look at the question of how did I create this, then we will always be giving power away to someone who is creating our lives, who is facilitating our lives. And of course, we'll feel as though we do not have control. We do not have command over our lives. So I guarantee you, when you begin to ask yourself that question, and you look at the nuances, and you really look at the nuances in life events, like really be brutally honest with yourself, you can begin to be aware of the aspects and the nuances that have led you into the situation. 100%. Like 100%. So that is self-leadership in and of itself, the ability to take radical responsibility, because we're all co-creators of a situation. It's like there is no way that you have not co-created the situation. You've ended up there for a reason, and you've chosen to end up there for a reason, whether you've been giving your power away for far too long or whatever that looks like. So when you begin to ask yourself that, then you're leading yourself. You're leading yourself in truth, you're leading yourself in empowerment, and at the same time, you're accepting yourself for everything that you have done that has resulted in you ending up in that situation. And usually that's the most difficult thing, to forgive yourself as to how you've ended up in that position. To accept yourself as to how you've ended up into the position. Because when there's acceptance and when there's forgiveness, then judgment is no longer. And you no longer judge yourself. You no longer hold on to emotions of shame, guilt, fear, anger. You begin to arrive at sacred neutrality in order to tap into self-love, instead of vibrating at fear and trying to tap into self-love, but ends up being self-centeredness, right? And when you're at sacred neutrality, that's when you begin to experience love. And when you begin to experience love in its purest form, and you integrate that within your discernment, things will begin to unfold for you in ways you have never ever experienced before. And that is self-leadership. The willingness to look at yourself and take radical responsibility for how you co-created the situation in any way, in any manner. That is self-leadership. Boom.
How did I create this? And full radical responsibility. Two things that I think have rocked the boat in my world many times, and when I've flipped those questions back to myself in difficult situations,
Very difficult situations.
and then to add on top of that, what can I learn from the situation? You know, how can I take responsibility, but then what can I now learn? And using that as the forward projection and the energy that can move us forward into greater levels of alignment in our truth, into a deeper connection with our self-love. Powerful.
Exactly.
The word sacred neutrality, we've had a few conversations about this. I'd love for you to just dive a little bit into sacred neutrality and how you've been able to use that in your life to create and elevate your relationships, your business partnerships, ultimately your life in general.
Yeah, 100%. So the principle behind this is the understanding that emotions are our compass indicators reflective of our truth to move forward. Emotions come up to show us something, either to reflect an incongruence or to reflect a need to honor ourselves more, right? And when we begin to be aware of our emotions instead of letting our emotions be us, then things begin to evolve in ways that are quite elevating. And for those of you who do not know the map of consciousness by David R. Hawkins, where he literally measured the vibrational frequency of every primary emotions on a universal chart. And for example, right, shame vibrates lower than guilt, which vibrates lower than fear, which vibrates lower than anger, courage, sacred neutrality, unconditional love, joy, peace, enlightenment, and so on and so forth, right? And these are the vibrational spectrum, right? So we talk about sacred neutrality, and sacred neutrality is allowing us to come back to self in order to let go of the destructive conditions that we've been hypnotized through and actually discover love for ourselves, like true untainted love for ourselves. So this is what I began to realize, right? If emotions are our compass indicators, then the awareness of them and the eventual transmutation of them is what will allow us to arrive at a baseline and the default frequency that allows us to create from a place of pull instead of a place of push, right? Because when you're creating from a place of pull, then you're creating from a place of empowerment. If you're creating from a place of push, you're creating from a place of either borrowed beliefs or trauma or whatever that looks like, because you're forcing your way into it, right? So with that being said, we need to understand the transmutation process, right? And this is my concept of how can we actually transmute our emotions, right? Emotive transmutation. So if whenever an emotion comes up, the first question you need to ask yourself is, where is this coming from? Like, where is this emotion coming from? Like, why is this emotion coming up for me, right? So the first phase is emotional awareness, right? You are not your emotions. You get to be the awareness of them. So when it comes up, whatever situation you're in, as it comes up, if you feel as though you're about to lose control of yourself because of the emotion, then you are simply the effect of the emotion. Coming back to cause is to first realize that the emotion is coming up. And if you're in a situation with, for example, your partner or your loved ones, is to simply express, I can feel this emotion coming up for me. I would love to explore this within myself. Can I create some space for myself to explore that? Instead of just letting it go all over the place and haywire in various ways. And if your partner can meet you in that, it's beautiful, because then you get to figure out, like, how is this emotion coming up for me, instead of projecting that onto her or onto anyone else. And this is the first step, emotional awareness. Acknowledging that I'm experiencing shame, I'm experiencing guilt, I'm experiencing fear, I'm experiencing anger. Because if you're not acknowledging them, then you are resisting them, you're rejecting them, and you're repressing them. And it's so interesting because you're essentially, if you're not acknowledging something, you're essentially fighting its existence, right? But fighting its existence doesn't make sense, because if you're fighting something, then you are validating that it exists. Because if it doesn't, then you don't have to fight, right? So simply by believing that it exists, and if belief is but worship by degree, fighting what you believe, fighting what you worship, it's a contradiction in and of itself.
Internal conflict.
So it never get resolved, right? It is only in the acknowledgement of them that you begin to shine light and bring awareness to them, right? You begin to shine light on the darkness. you begin to be like, where is this fear coming from? Like, how is this coming up for me? Blah, blah, blah. You begin to be aware of them. And then you can move into the next phase, which is emotional transmutation. So now all of these fear beliefs are coming up. You get to utilize and leverage the map of consciousness and be like, so the first thing, right, like after guilt, courage before sacred neutrality. So courage is usually, you elevate your anger towards a state of action, right? And the state of action allows you to see the execution and how it manifests in the 3D reality in order for you to take on data and information to arrive back to self, right? Courage isn't necessarily a grounded emotion because it can come from trauma, it can come from whatever, like I just want to break free, you know, I just want to do it in various ways. That's why sacred neutrality vibrates at a higher frequency, because this is where you become at various levels of like groundedness and centeredness to create anew, right? So when you begin to ask yourself that, the first step is to actually understand courage, right? So whenever you're experiencing emotions of shame, guilt, fear, and anger, you ask yourself, all of these beliefs that are coming up, let's reframe these beliefs and let's focus on what courage is telling me. What is courage? What will courage say about this belief? And then you reframe it, right? And let's say if you are, I'm fearful that my partner will leave me. What does courage say? My courage says, my courage is telling me, I trust my partner and I trust that she is in this relationship with me because of the love that we feel for each other, and therefore she will not leave me, right? And that is courage. And then from there you can transmit to sacred neutrality. So what does groundedness mean for me? It means that I need to trust myself more, right? And then when you're able to come into like, I need to trust myself more, then you can go from emotional transmutation to emotional elevation. You go from sacred neutrality to love. Be like, cool, I need to trust myself more. What self-love practices and rituals can I do to trust myself more in order not to project my distrust onto my partner, thinking that she will leave me when it's actually myself afraid of abandonment that comes from a core wound. And then you begin to integrate self-love practices in order to move through that. That's when you begin to elevate your emotions, and then you begin to arrive at a state of being that is love, and that is when you can literally transform your self-leadership skills. That's leadership transformation. That's the next phase. Because from there, when you begin to operate from a place of love, you find real joy, right? And you begin to really see the changes in your life. So that is my thoughts when it comes to sacred neutrality. It's ground zero. Ground zero, but it's actually groundedness and centeredness in order to integrate true practices to elevate yourself to unconditional love. Yeah.
So it's coming out of those lower vibrationary emotions and I guess seeing them for what they are, and I guess a non-identification with them being us.
Exactly, very, very important, because a lot of the times what we identify with constitutes our reality, right? And we are so attached to our identity because that is our external manifestation of our need for certainty. So it's so important to not identify yourself with lower vibrational emotions, because then you are fear. Then fear you are.
And in the same realm, it's like also non-identification with thoughts, non-identification with emotions. And then to a further degree, like what else do you believe that arises within the human body or the soul that we probably over-identify with, where we could actually remove the identification with those things and be more liberated and more free or more surrendered to life as it is?
A lot of the things that we identify with usually come from externalities. Usually come from how we look. Usually come from what we have. Usually comes from how we are perceived in society, right? Opinions of others, right? So usually that's what we identify ourselves with. You know, it's all the externalities, right? It's not based upon a grounded truth of the internal reality of who you actually are, right? And that's usually what people identify with. And it's so easy to do that because it feels very real, because we can see it, we can touch it in various ways, we can smell it, and so on and so forth. But all of these like externalities can be distractions because your mind can be conditioned, right? Your spirit can't. When your mind is conditioned with beliefs that your soul knows not to be true of you, what ends up happening is you experience a dissonance and a split in your being. That's where anxiety, depression, and suicide eventuates. When you realize that the truth of who you are doesn't align with what you're seeing, you begin to feel anxious, you begin to feel depressed, right? Because You begin to be so separated from society or separated from perceived reality. But we need to know this. Very, very powerful. We have been conditioned. The best way to control the most intelligent and powerful species on this planet is to divide themselves from the love they have within themselves. And that is what we've been doing. From the moment we arrive at an age of begin to understand who we are forced into a system where being our most authentic versions of ourselves is wrong if it doesn't align with what is perceived to be normal. We confuse people with their biological makeup through conditioning, through media, through social media, that people begin to perceive that the only way to belong in society, to feel accepted, is to literally alter their physical makeup. That's how conditioned we have been. So we need to let go of that. Right? We need to let go of what we identify ourselves with externally and begin to come back within and be like, who do we truly want to become? What are our core values? If we let go of shame, guilt, fear, and anger, and we come from love, what are our true core values and operate from that place? Attached to nothing, connected to everything. So important. And that starts with your connection to yourself. How well do you know yourselves? How much love do you have for yourself? And then when that starts from within, it begins to overflow externally, and you begin to see your reality start to shift. You begin to experience true freedom from the shackles of societal expectations, true freedom from your own prison of expectations. You begin to experience fulfillment because it's all about the impact you're creating. It's all about the presence of the life you're living, and it's no longer based upon an externality, a matrix that you're attaching your self-worth and your identity to. And when you can dissolve that, there's a lot of peace that can be found with it. Yeah.
Disidentification from the matrix, ultimately.
Exactly.
And that matrix being an energy that has persisted throughout society and culture that we should be something that we're not. And then if we're not that thing, then we're not good enough. And that makes us, if we're not good enough, that we can't then do the things that are going to get us to the point that we would be good enough. So you're constantly stuck in a seesaw between, I'm not good enough. Because I'm not good enough, I can't do the things that are good enough to make me good enough. So for the rest of my life, I'm going to be doomed.
Exactly.
And that then falls into the pitfall of identification with the overbearing thoughts in the mind,
100%.
the emotions that are riddled through the body, which, as you said, leads to anxiety of the future, depression from what's happened in the past, and a demise that unfortunately so many people do go down. And I've been there. I've been in states where, it was all caving in on me, everything. And it was, in my mind, I couldn't see any way out. In my body, I couldn't feel any way out. It was just a stuck feeling. And I know you've probably been in or had similar situations where it's all compounding and everything, whether it's, we were talking about yesterday, it's the lies that have been built up, it's the stories that have been told, and you can't figure a way to get out. But the only way to liberate that is to come back to the truth and to really, really become curious with ourselves around, how can we be responsible? How did I create this? How can I learn from the situation and then grow and move forward in life?
Correct. Exactly.
It's a very powerful way to live, and I guess that is, at its core, sovereignty.
Sovereignty is so important because sovereignty allows you to live a life in truth, allows you to give in truth, allows you to receive in truth, right? And it eliminates discordance, it eliminates dissonance, it eliminates anxiousness, right? It eliminates depression. And I've got this framework, very, very powerful. It is very difficult. It is very, very challenging. One of the biggest challenges that humanity experiences, or individuals experience, business owners experience, and we experience, is this, right? We need to understand that there is no coincidence that we are born into a specific set of parents. We're born into a specific environment. We're born into a specific culture. We look a specific way. There are no coincidences. our soul chose this for a specific purpose to fulfill in this 3D reality. 100%, there are no coincidences. So if we begin to understand that, like truly understand the synchronicities that are happening, then we need to understand this as well. The people that experience success in their life, few of them have actually experienced the ability to transcend beyond the environment that they have been born into. Right? Because the environment that you have been born into serves as a foundational makeup. It allows you to receive the set of lessons that you need to receive in order to elevate, transcend, and create change. But a few of us we find it very challenging to break free from the environment we are born in because of the attachment that we have with the people and the environment that feels comfortable. But the only way to truly transcend is to, number one, begin to be aware of the environment that you are born into, because as much as we have taken on all of these borrowed beliefs, which is a human condition, we're also taking on life conditions from the environment that they're in. Like living in Australia is very different from living in Bali, very different from living in the US, very different from living in different environments, and different environments have got different hypnotic suggestions that have been placed onto the environment itself. And the only way to really break free from the prison of your mind is to break free from the environment that you have been born into. Is to let go of the attachment that you have with that environment in order to experience different models of reality, different environments to integrate, to experience different parts of yourself in order to transcend the environment that you've been born into, to transcend the fears, to transcend the limitations, to transcend the conditions. So if you truly want to live an epic life, follow this framework. Change your environment, E. Then you will meet new people, P, who will give you new information, I. Skills that you can integrate into your life, and then you get consistent with that, C. And then through that consistency, you begin to break free, you begin to create like a fucking flywheel that truly breaks free from the conditionings of your environment. Environment, people, information, consistency. And then you break free.
Epic.
And then you find yourself. And then you create anew.
Wow.
Boom.
Wow. I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up in such an incredible framework to make shift in life, and we'll have to have another one of these conversations.
we get to.
Yeah, we get to, and we'll have to. we've got an ecstatic dance to get to, so yeah, thank you so much, brother man.
Such a pleasure, brother.
That was epic. How can people find you? Just final little thing we're going to share.
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Instagram, and that's at RAY_PANGSH. That's my personal profile. And I've only got one profile. I've got fake profiles created of me, and people have been scammed before. So when you follow me, just send me a message. I'll send you a voice message so you know that's from me. But I've only got one account. And I've got my book account, which is at the Unconditional Truth. So feel free to connect with me on those platforms. And I'm looking forward to have more conversations with each and every single one of you.
Big bro.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Sexy.
That's fucking dope.